Hello everybody and welcome to another tactical preview video from Stats Perform. This week we're going to be looking at the big game in the Premier League, Tottenham Hotspur against Manchester City. Spurs are on the longest unbeaten run currently in the Premier League, which is possibly not what people would have imagined at this stage of the season. They would definitely not have imagined Manchester City being down in mid-table. Having problems going forward, scoring goals, and not looking totally secure at the back. City's XG per game this season of 1.33 is the lowest figure we have for them, not just in the Pep Guardiola era, but in the entire XG era. So definite issues there. Tottenham, on the other hand, look like they've found an identity, brought in some key players in the summer, including Gareth Bale and Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, both of whom seem to have improved the team quite a lot. So this game is going to be a lot closer than it might have been last season. So here to look at that with me are Kevin Chroust and Ben Mackriell. Ben, you're going to have a quick look at City first up.
Yeah, thanks, Dunk. So going to look a little bit at just some overall metrics on City this season. As Duncan said, they're going through a little bit of a transition. It's certainly different to how they looked last season. Probably attributed to a few key personnel shifts, particularly in that back three, back four. So that certainly, I think, had an impact. And if we look at the sequence metrics, so looking at kind of how they are in possession, there's really no change. They're absolutely dominating possession. They're dominating in terms of the length of their possessions and their sequences. In this sense, they're ranked first in average number of passes per sequence, in the length, and the time that they're having in possession. And probably other than Liverpool last year, that's been consistent for a number of seasons now. There's been a little bit of a drop off in where they're pressing and winning back the ball. So that's that sequence start meters kind of they've dropped down to a third position. But they haven't always been the most aggressive pressing team. Certainly not in the comparison to Liverpool. So there's probably not a huge amount there that would be surprising. But where we have seen a shift has been in the way that they're converting those that possession and that domination of the ball into converting that into chances. When we look at this comparison here between the 19-20 season and the 2021 season, absolutely clear that they were the most clinical team in the league. Absolutely in front of goal, ranked first in categories in both goals, expected goals. The number of touches they were having in the box. We know from that City's team in the last couple of years, once they get the ball into the final third, they are going to create a chance. They're going to create a shot from that, even if they have to keep the ball and move it around the box and wait for someone like Kevin De Bruyne or in the past, someone like David Silva to unlock a ball to Aguero or Gabriel Jesus. They were going to be able to do that, and that shows in this data. But you can see here from the 2021 season how much of a drop-off there has been in that. Now, we're still early. City played 7 games so far, so we're still very early. But as Duncan mentioned at the beginning, their XG has dropped off by almost a goal a game. They're certainly scoring a lot less. They're almost mid-table in goals and XG. And even kind of their ability to create around the box has declined with fewer touches in the box and significantly fewer crosses. And that's probably a lot down to their change in shape. But even when they do get crosses in the box, the accuracy of those crosses, they're very good at getting the ball to the byline, cutting the ball across. Their accuracy has gone from last season at 22% of their crosses were successful, down to 14% this season. So that's a huge change in their ability to convert that possession into domination around the box and converting into goal scoring opportunities. One of the biggest criticisms of City so far this season has been that change at the back, and obviously they've brought in a couple of new players, lost some of the guys that have kind of played in those roles, certainly like Company and others over the last couple of years. There's been a real change in that back line. And we can really see that in the way that that's changed for City's opponents between last season and this season. So shots have increased by a shot a game, which might not sound a lot, but over the period of a season, that's quite significant. Goals per game has jumped up. They certainly have conceded a lot more goals this season than you would have expected, considering the opposition they've faced. XG per 90, quality of chances has increased. And that conversion rate would be really worrying. Almost a 3% swing in conversion rate, and the minutes per goal suggests that there's always an opportunity, no matter which side City have faced this season. There's always been opportunities. And as we saw in the game against Liverpool before the international break, it was very open at the back. A very high quality Liverpool, dangerous attacking threat. They created a ton of chances in the early stages of that game, and it was an incredibly open first 45 minutes. And that'll certainly give Spurs some heart as they go into this game this weekend.
Cheers, Ben. Yeah, I mean, the contrast with last season is massive. I mean, they had 17 more goals at this stage last season. You do wonder, given that they lost 9 games in the league last season, yet still, sort of beat Watford 8-0, got over 100 goals yet again. This kind of inconsistency of one week smashing teams, the next week, suffering what would be a key defeat. They're trying to chase down Liverpool. It really has made Pep Guardiola try and, go for a different approach this season. Tottenham, they've only really got one approach. That's to listen to what their manager, Jose Mourinho, says and carry out the orders. And so far, it seems to be working perfectly, or near enough. So, yeah, Kev, over to you to have a look at Spurs.
Yeah, those orders, whatever they were against City last season, panned out okay in the match that Mourinho was in charge. We look at those results, and Spurs had 4 points from 2 matches, one before Mourinho was there, and then 3 in the home win, the 2-0 home win after. Sounds reasonable, right? But if you look at the combined XG advantage that City had in that, it was absurd. It was nearly 6 goals to under half a goal for Tottenham. So 5.84 to 0.44. And what we're looking at right here is that win that Spurs had. So a 2-0 win. And if you look in their attacking penalty area there, you see 3 shots. And that is not a mistake. They scored on 2 of the 3 shots. Look at the other end of the pitch. City in that match alone had an XG of about 3, 19 total shots, 6 on target. So, it's been a good stretch for Spurs for sure this season too. But it's a tough span of matches coming up, starting with this one. So you've got City, then Chelsea, then the North London derby. A bit of a break with Palace, but then you're right back into Liverpool, Leicester, and Wolves leading up to Boxing Day. So kind of similar to what Ben went through with City, we're going to look at some of the basics with Spurs. So, that all-important metric of goals. Last season, they were 6th at 1.6. This season, that's jumped up to almost 2.4, and that's 3rd. It's reflected a bit in their XG as well. So last season, they were mid-table there, 1.3. Outperformed that obviously a little bit with those 1.6 goals, but their XG's jumped to about 2 goals. And with those attackers that they've got, they're certainly capable of slightly overperforming their XG over the course of the season. Guys like Kane and Son have shown season after season that they're capable of doing that. Touches in the opponent box, they're about the same, even though their rank has improved from 14th last season to 8th this year. We do see a nice improvement in their shots on target, though. So last season, mid-table 9th, 4.2 per match. That's up to 6 per match, and that's 2nd. And then something that's interesting to consider with those last 2 metrics is the percentage of shots that are taking place in the box. Last season, that was just over 60%. That was near the bottom of the table. They're up to almost 70%, which is 4th right now. Where those are originating is maybe a bit different, maybe a bit less from crossing, you would think, by looking at their crosses right now. Last season they were 16th. This season they're actually 18th. But kind of the inverse of what Ben was talking about with City. Last season's crossing percentage for Spurs was 17.3. This season that's up to 26.3. So that's gone from last in the division up to 3rd. So they've got different players on the outside this year. So Matt Doherty's not going to play, but he's been a small part of boosting that accuracy on the right. And Ray Wilon on the left should be contributing to that over the course of the season as well. We've seen so far in 3 Nations League matches with Spain, he's completing more than 50% of his crosses actually. So overall, for Spurs this season compared to last, lots of opportunities. Granted, a lot of those came early in the season when you were seeing those like 5-2 results and 6-1 results against the team I will not mention for Ben. But the results have been a bit more, like, shall we say, Mourinho-esque lately. The 1-0 over West Brom, winning in the 88th minute, I believe it was. Regardless, I think it's important to talk about Harry Kane, and we've heard a lot about some of his distribution this season. He's leading the division in assists, of course. But how is he going about that? And what we see here is his passing, just his number of passes per match, per 90 minutes. It's up to 25 per match. And that's a level we haven't seen out of him since 2015-16. But it's not just how many passes, it's the kind of passes. So he's completing more passes that are taking place in his own half. So 5.9 in his own half, and we don't see that anywhere on this list. So we go back all the way to 2015-16, and the highest we've seen is 4.5. But we've also seen an increase in the passes that are going into the attacking third. So a pretty substantial increase to 5.6 per 90 minutes. We didn't see that over 4 anywhere in those previous 5 seasons. And those passes going forward. So we don't see the percentage of his passes going forward touching 30% until this season, and he's actually at 40%. What's it resulting in? All sorts of chances. 2.25 chances created per match. We didn't see that over 1.4 in the previous 5 seasons. So what does this actually look like on the pitch? If we take a look at his heat map from his passes from, so looking at his passes delivered from 2015-16 through last season, we see this rather large pocket in the attacking left, right? But it's almost all in the attacking half of the pitch. And he's been playing with Son, favoring that left side for a few seasons now. So it's not surprising that it's a little to the left. But if we flip over to 2020, 2021, we see this pocket of red that is on in Spurs' own half of the pitch. So he's dropping deeper, it seems, on that left side, maybe to receive the ball and then distributing from there a bit more. But it's also interesting to look at who he's actually linking up with here. We know that Kane and Son are great together. But I think if you let it get to that, you're already potentially in trouble with those two linking up. So what might be happening before that? Well, this season, if we look at Harry Kane's pass matrix, a lot of that is coming from the left. So in this, we're looking at not only situations in which Kane is the passer, but some situations in which he is the receiver as well. So this is for the 2021 season. He and Son are linking up with Kane as the passer, Son as the receiver, more than any combination Kane is a part of, 31 passes there. But then if we look down, it's those wide players and also those holding midfielders. So Højbjerg is certainly a player in the midfield that favors the left side, and he's linking up with Kane considerably. And then Reguilón, also a player who's out on that left wing, is linking up with Kane. And Ndombele is a player who is actually shifting, and we'll show this a little later. He's favoring the left side a bit as well with Kane. So it's certainly when the ball is moving through Harry Kane, it's on that left side, and this season it's kind of shifting back into their own half a little bit more with him coming deeper to receive the ball, it seems. So we'll dig a bit more into that and what his role is like in Edge in a few minutes.
Thanks, Kev. Yeah, I mean, we all know how productive the Kane to Son partnership has been this season. 7 of Kane's 8 assists have been to Son. 23% of his passes to Son this season have been assists, which possibly not that sustainable. Or maybe it is. Maybe Harry Kane is now that good at football. But that's Spurs going forward. The defence, I guess, has maybe been a bigger surprise, particularly central defence. But they're going to have to cope with City this weekend. Ben, you're going to have a deeper look at what City did against Liverpool to see if that offers any clues as to what they might do against Spurs.
Yeah, so I guess the last game against Liverpool for City may give us a bit of a window into a similarly tough matchup against Spurs this weekend. And as I mentioned earlier, it was an incredibly open game, particularly that first 45 minutes. there was so much space between the lines. There was so much space in behind that both Liverpool exploited on City defensively, but City also really starting to get runners into wide areas and in behind that Liverpool back three. So we're going to look here at the kind of shape of the team, and you can see immediately how high and how wide that front four get. And if we look at when they have possession, you can see how spread out the whole team is. You look at the two fullbacks, the width that they give, the two centre backs very wide as well. You've still got the two holding midfielders. So in this game, you had Gundogan and Rodri sitting in and kind of protecting any turnovers. But immediately you see this front attacking four, and you basically get a 2-4-4 for City. And if we look at some of the different kind of phases of the game that City play in, if we look at the maintenance phase, which is basically when City are kind of controlling possession and looking to progress the ball up the pitch, you can see the width comes from both the fullbacks and these kind of wingers. In Sterling, Ferran Torres was playing on the right hand side this time, but you've got other players who drift into these pockets, and obviously Jesus and De Bruyne kind of occupying the centre backs in those two central positions. But what happens is that when they go from this phase where they're really trying to stretch out their opposition, they're trying to stretch the back four, and they're trying to stretch that midfield and making them move around and really trying to disrupt the defensive shape. But when they get into the sustained threat phase, which is when they're really trying to dominate possession around the box and trying to break the line, it becomes very narrow again. They're trying to get through the middle of the pitch. They're trying to get through into the inside pockets between the fullbacks and between the centre backs. If we just add the Liverpool shape to this, you can see that they're trying to get in between the lines. They're trying to occupy all of the back four and trying to get them marked so that they can kind of exploit 1v1 situations. And, you know, any coach will tell you defensively, you don't want to be in consistent 1v1 situations at the back. You always want to have a spare man to protect you and cover you. And that's what City do to really exploit that. And as we're going to see in a minute, Liverpool were exactly the same when they were trying to exploit City. So they have this real width when they're starting possessions, and when they have the ball around the back, you'll see City try and really spread that Spurs team out. But then they do want to attack down the middle. So if we look at the patterns of play that City used to exploit that, and this looks at the whole season up until this point, you can see quite clearly that they like to move the ball wide. They're going to utilise that width that they're getting from the fullbacks and from that kind of front four. But when they get into this kind of more attacking area of the pitch, you can see that everything comes back inside. It's all coming back into the likes of De Bruyne, linked play from Jesus, Sterling coming in and attacking inside pockets. So that's the strategy for City. It's pretty clear. They're trying to spread you out so that they can then attack you on the inside. And that's what Spurs will have to be really aware of this weekend, is not allowing themselves to get too spread out so that they can exploit those central areas. Now, against Liverpool, the flip side was also true. You know, City did look very spread out. There was huge gaps between the lines. You'll see if you watch even just the first 10 minutes of that game back, the number of times they were hit on the counter-attack or they were hit in transition where they were able to get 3 or 4 players behind that City midfield really caused some problems for the two City centre-backs. And we look here at the pattern analysis from that game for Liverpool. So this is Liverpool's possessions. And you can see that they were trying to move the ball around that City midfield and then really start to attack those wide areas and try and get crosses into the box. So now if we look at City defensively and their defensive shape to kind of illustrate that point, it's almost exactly the same as what City tried to do against Liverpool. They have 4 players right up against that City back line. So they're 1v1 in every situation. And they've got these two City midfielders, but they have to be pretty aware of players like Wijnaldum and Henderson and their distribution capabilities and put pressure on them there. So there's a lot for that City back four to be aware of. What was really evident in the game was what happened when the ball was in wide areas. So if we look here and we highlight this area, the pitch on the right-hand side, if you look back at the chances that Liverpool created against City, again, particularly in that first half, there was a lot of crosses going in behind this City back line into the box. And players like Mane and Jota, Firmino and Salah getting in between City centre-backs and getting into the box and being able to get on the end of crosses. And it was exactly the same if we look at the left-hand side. There were Liverpool attackers and Liverpool forwards floating around the shoulders of the City centre-backs, looking for that cross to come in into this area here, behind that City back line, for them to get on the end of. Now, Liverpool weren't able to convert that kind of opportunity, but you'd imagine that with the wing-backs and the full-backs that Spurs have, and people like Kane and Son hovering around that City defensive line, you'd imagine that Spurs will try and exploit the same strategy, get Kane and Son on the kind of shoulders of the defenders and trying to attack that space between the keeper and the City back four.
Cheers, Ben. I mean, it remains to be seen whether Jose Mourinho, of all people, is ever going to play a 4-2-4 in a game as big as this. But he probably doesn't need to, because Harry Kane can basically play every position up front now. But what is he now? What sort of player is he? Kev, I'm sure you've got the answers.
Yeah, Duncan, I don't know if I have the answers, but our AI team does. If we look back at 2019, 2020, Harry Kane was an advanced forward, right? So nobody's going to argue that. Third on the team in terms of net possession value. So he's the third most dangerous player going forward for Spurs. And if we look at his progressive passing, 0.11. So just remember that number for when we jump forward to this season. The other thing to notice is kind of who else is on this list. You've got two players, in Mora and Arya, who are out on the right more frequently. And like we talked about a bit before, the attack has certainly shifted to the left this season. So again, Harry Kane, an advanced forward with kind of a minimal progressive passing. If we jump ahead to this season, Son is still their most dangerous player. Harry Kane is second, but we see that his role has actually changed. So we've got a model that considers all sorts of elements and has actually classed Harry Kane now as more of a link forward, which makes sense with some of the spatial stuff we looked at earlier. The other thing is, look at this progressive passing. It's almost tripled. So his possession value is certainly changed, but the players he's linking up with are a bit different as well. So we talked about those two outside backs who are new into the squad this year. They're classed as wide attacking progressors, and Reguilon, who plays on the left, Son, who plays on the left, Kane, who drifts left, Ndombele, who drifts left. These are players who attack on one side of the pitch, save for Doherty, who won't be in the lineup. Now, what does this look like on the pitch, actually, if we look at this in terms of shape analysis? We're looking at the first 64 minutes of their last match against West Brom. And you can call this formation what you want. You can call it a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1. Doesn't really matter. But we're gonna look at a few different elements here with when they build up from the left versus when they build up from the right, and how this shape changes. So right off the bat, we're looking specifically at the players rather than the roles right now. So we see that Harry Kane, he favors the left side. He's a lot closer to Son than he is to Bale. We also see this kind of imbalance in the midfield with Højbjerg a bit deeper than Sissoko, and this kind of either causes or allows for Ndombele to drift left as well. If we look at roles, we can see how Kane and Ndombele overlap here. So yes, Kane is your center forward, but look how much Ndombele is actually overlapping with him. So if Kane's coming back to the ball, and then how much Kane is actually dropping into the middle to receive the ball. 14 minutes there where Ndombele was spent about 24 minutes of those first 64 minutes before he came off. Now then we're going to switch back to players. and do a custom ball zone selection while they're attacking. So while they have the ball, this is what it looks like. Now, what does this look like on the right side? Sorry, custom ball zone selection. We select the right side. So we see that things shift over, but not a ton changes. So Højbjerg still is deeper than Sissoko. We see that Ndombele is kind of in that space there, and then Kane's not really drifting over as far. Son certainly pinches into the middle. Bale's about where we might expect him to be, but Kane isn't in this zone. He's not dropping in to get the ball here, and it might be because he doesn't have quite as much space here with Sissoko forward. Now it's going to look a little different if we look at the left and roughly the same zone over there. So we see that imbalance still holds with Højbjerg being a bit deeper, Sissoko a bit more advanced, but Kane's actually dropping back into this zone. So he's, like we showed earlier with his heat map, he's actually dropping back to get the ball kind of in here a bit more than he is on the right side. And we see that whereas Son was kind of pinching in here for when we had this on the right side, Bale's really staying quite wide. So this is just kind of a peek at how things are different for them coming from the left side and the right. And we see that this XG value is quite a bit higher. So coming from the left side, almost 3.4, 0.4. And then if we look at it coming from the right, 0.14. So, things are certainly working out for them on the left, and it's probably something for City to keep in mind going into this one.
Thanks, Kev. Yeah, that's pretty striking to see how much more dangerous and effective Spurs have been on the left flank this season. I mean, obviously, playing City, I think a few teams have targeted Kyle Walker on the right-hand side this season, and he's given away a couple of penalties. So, that could be an area to look at. And I guess Spurs have also got the option, if everyone concentrates on that flank, Gareth Bale can just hang out on his own on the other side and maybe cause damage from there. But, Mourinho's faced Guardiola 24 times in his career, and he's lost 10 of them. It's his worst record against another manager. And it's been a long time, really, since they've come into a game where Mourinho's probably the manager in form, if managers can be in form. And Guardiola's got he's got it all to do to beat his old nemesis. So it should be a great game. Hope this video has helped you understand some of the elements of it. Look out for some of the things we've talked about happening in the match, and we'll be back soon with another video. Thanks very much.